Let's talk about solutions. Let me talk about the medical side for a second. I don't want to get into specific medical strategies, but a lot of containment has to do with data. The reason Germany has such a low death rate is because they were so diligent. They have an old population. Germans are getting decrepit. They are old as fuck. But Germans were so meticulous in tracking down clusters of infection that their death rates are shockingly low for the age of population that they have. And same thing with South Korea, same thing with Singapore, same thing with Taiwan. And we have the data to do it. Weeks ago, I tweeted out, in an Orwellian way, Google and mobile networks could use location data to slow this virus by tracking down known cases or those that were hospitalized, and then they can use the location data to see others that were in the same vicinity at the same time. They have their cell phone number, they can notify them to self-quarantine as high risk, and then they would be prioritized for testing. And that way we could have contained this whole thing. I don't know if it's too late for that. I think at the time I tweeted it, there was time. I'd leave that to medical experts to decide, but we have the technology and we're not using it. I saw two pieces that were written afterwards. One was that the UK is using phone location data to identify clusters, but it's not specifically identifiable. And if there's ever been a time to use specifically identifiable data, it's now. And maybe we can opt in or not, or maybe make an app available. But the reality is we have so many levers we're not pulling. A second thing, which is a no-brainer, is pay everybody's out-of-pocket costs. It's nobody's fault this virus hit. $30,000, I saw someone got a bill for coronavirus. Let's take care of it. We can do it. And in fact, we should do it because of our lack of preparation. And a lot of people, I get why they say, well, why should we support companies? Last time we supported banks and bailed them out. We should just bail out the people and give them the money. It should be both. And it's really important to rescue business because it's like prioritizing a broken hand over cardiac arrest. One sustains the other. All in, it's $2 trillion. Remember, our total budget for the year is $4.5 trillion, which includes $1 trillion in borrowing. Companies are going to take wild advantage of it. They're going to pull a lot of political strings, and it's already happening, where they're going to get bailouts for businesses that were already on their way out. Like retailers were hanging by a thread. Macy's shut down over 100 stores earlier this year. Are you going to give them a bailout? And maybe we don't have the time to sort this out right now, and you just have to make that capacity available to everybody. But I don't like unconditional bailouts. There should be strings attached. An example that Mark Cuban talked about is that none of that money is used for stock buybacks, which is a cheap way to inflate your stock price. That money is actually deployed for saving the business and salaries. In fact, he was talking about banning stock buybacks altogether. I think there are other things we can do to put more safety, security, benefits, and money into people's hands. Uncertainty not only creates market turmoil, it creates personal turmoil. Something that Denmark and the UK are doing is they're saying, look, the government will cover between 75 and 80% of people's salaries. In exchange, you have to not fire them. Unfortunately, they're only talking about $350 billion for small businesses. I don't think that's enough. It's likelier to have to be in the $1 trillion range. And the rest is giving people checks for housing and groceries and whatever else. Now, you might be asking yourself, how did the government get all this money? They didn't come to us and say, hey, we need a little bit more to make this whole corona thing go away. No, that money is being invented.
Is that tax money that the Fed is spending?
It's not tax money. We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
The government is printing the money, just adding digits. This is a crazy ability the US has that other governments have in a much more limited way. The reason we can do it without causing either inflation, the value of the dollar to go down, or for other countries to demand higher prices for goods or whatever else, or for us to default. The reason that doesn't happen is the US dollar became the world's currency. And this happened after World War II, where we were really the only one left standing. And at some point, we had the gold standard, so everyone started using dollars because they knew they could exchange them for gold. Even when that went away, the dollar still remained the most widely distributed currency. And not just as paper money, but also as bonds or debt denominated in dollars. The entire world, anyone who saves money, saves in dollars. China had, I don't know, somewhere between $1.5 and $2 trillion last time I looked in US bonds. This is a very dangerous game we're playing by just inventing currency. When you create a bunch of new stuff out of thin air, all the stuff drops in value. But in situations like this, you take the risk of devaluation to save the economy. A lot of what happened in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan never made it into our budget. We printed a bunch of money, some of which disappeared, paying military contractors, paying off Afghanis and officials and whatever, because wars cost trillions of dollars and only a percentage of it was official government spending. We do this all the time. And what's funny is there's a movement on the far left behind an economic theory called modern monetary theory. All right, don't tune out. This is really interesting. That theory says that we can fix all of our problems, provide free education, free healthcare, and a whole bunch of other stuff, housing, whatever else, without negatively affecting our economy simply by printing more money the way we did in these wars, the way we are doing now with this coronavirus rescue. This, in theory, would sound insane. This doesn't conform to any reality I'm familiar with, but we already do it. So it's hard to blame them for thinking this can be done. And you know what? To an extent, it probably can. We just don't know where the end is. The problem with modern monetary theory, or MMT, is they behave as if there is no end to this. And there is very clearly an end. We will go bankrupt. We will default at some point. We just don't know exactly where that breaking point is. Not at the moment. And the other thing that's kind of a perversion, Keynesianism, the basic premise is the government is supposed to save during the good times and then spend during the bad times. And the Chinese government certainly does that. But we just spend and spend during good and bad times. And then when bad times come, we invent money out of thin air. That was a really bad snap. You can't blame others for thinking we can do this magic all the time. The other funny thing about this is everybody loves a handout, especially capitalists. Every single one of these companies is already right now petitioning the government for all kinds of freebies, and they're stuffing it into the coronavirus rescue package. $7 million for one charter school, $23 million to Howard University, which has a $647 million endowment. They want minority-owned banks to get business. I don't know what any of these things have anything to do with coronavirus. The people who are supposed to be saving us are looting us. I just can't believe these are the people that are in charge. It is frightening to me. It is just frightening. So you think they care about you. If you're waiting for the government to rescue you and you believe they will, send me your masks. Send me your N95 masks, because obviously, the government will provide for you, right? The other thing is, you can never make permanent changes in a temporary crisis. Bad things start to happen. That's how we ended up with the Patriot Act and domestic spying long after 9/11. Yes, it probably helped in some ways, but it also eroded our civil liberties. And we are about to do the same thing. That's it for this section. Join me tomorrow for the next part in this series. And don't forget to subscribe to the email list here and join the Patreon for lots of members-only episodes. I'm Steve Faktor for the McFuture. See you tomorrow.